Welcome to The Holistic Nurse with your host, Peggy Smith. Peggy will introduce and educate her viewers about the differences between alternative, holistic, and complementary medical therapies. Her goal is to empower the lay medical consumer to learn how to advocate for themselves. So now, please welcome the host of The Holistic Nurse, Peggy Smith.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of The Holistic Nurse with Peggy Smith. This week, we are going to be reintroducing Max Gauthier from Maximum Therapy. He was with us a little over a year ago, coming to us from Canada. Max, I'd like to welcome you to our show today.
Awesome. Thank you very
Uh,
much, Peggy. It's a pleasure to be
uh,
back. I must did something right the first time.
so tell everybody like a little bit about yourself and what the kind of therapy that you practice, what we'll be discussing today.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that. So again, my name is Max. I live in Nova Scotia, Canada. And in terms of the therapeutic modalities that I typically use, hypnosis, somatic parts work, and I use a variety of different approaches to work with the internal parts of yourself, befriending them, seeing how we can integrate them. But particularly recently, I've been really focusing on patterns, and that's what I would like to focus on.
That's wonderful. And you're a certified RTT therapist. What does that stand for? Most people I don't think are familiar with that.
Yeah, excellent. It stands for Rapid Transformational Therapy. Lots of buzzwords. It's a certain type of hypnotherapy, and it's designed to take the client back to scenes, events, memories from their past that are directly linked to the root problem about what they're experiencing.
So it sounds like it's something using a lot of the quantum physics principles. Then most of the rapid stuff comes from that background.
The quantum physics stuff, I won't comment on that too much. I'm not smart enough for that. But yeah, in terms of like causing physical changes, the process of neuroplasticity, so your actual brain changes function and shape based on what you put into it. So by using hypnosis, we can actually enter the subconscious, get rid of the filter, and start to create real changes in real time.
That's exciting. So tell us about patterns and how we get stuck in them, I guess. So kind of
Yeah,
patterns usually do we maybe I guess we don't worry about if we had a pattern of winning the lottery, we wouldn't be worried about that.
of
Uh,
course. If we can specialize in that, that would be excellent. So when I say a pattern, I mean something very specific. It's a behavior that got wired in, usually early on, so usually in childhood, and it's typically to keep you safe from something. So if you might see this presented like you might go quiet in your corporate meeting and you won't want to speak up, or it might be something as simple as you're reaching for food when you're not actually hungry. So like from the outside, it looks irrational, but from the inside, whatever part of you originally laid down that wiring, that original wiring early on, that's the most logical thing in the world. It makes perfect sense to it. So, how do we deal with that gap? And that's where we look at patterns.
okay. So just how specifically do you deal with it? Because we have, there's so many different holistic methods out there that people get confused. Is there a type of personality that would be looking for your specific? I mean, everybody likes to get cured rapidly, and we
Of
don't
course.
have time or money to be spend 50 years in psychoanalysis
Of course.
anymore.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's the kind of the core idea that I'd like to introduce, and this is what I see in pretty much all the clients I've worked with. A lot of people believe being stuck in a pattern is a willpower failure, and from my end, that's not accurate. It's old protections that are still running the show. And so when we're looking at that, we're kind of looking at two different sides of the brain. So we have your prefrontal cortex, and that's what deals with like critical thinking, processing information in the moment. And then you have your amygdala, and that's a much older part of the brain. And that's kind of what fires automatically. So, what the amygdala does is it skips past conscious processing entirely. It actually goes past the prefrontal cortex. So, what that really means for a client is if they're stuck in a certain pattern, that pattern fires before the thought even comes in to not do it. So, this is something that happens behind the scenes without, beyond someone's, personal acknowledgement of what's happening. So how I approach things, I've recently discovered a really interesting analogy, and you might appreciate it, Peggy. Tell me if this makes sense. Have you ever played the game of Jenga before?
Yes, uh-huh.
So you're familiar with it. In case your audience isn't, you build essentially a tower out of little wooden building blocks, and the whole objective of the game is you want the other person to knock the tower down, like cause it to collapse, and then you win. With my therapy, we're actually doing the opposite. What we're doing is we're pulling the little wooden workings, the little wooden pieces off of the Jenga tower until the entire tower collapses. And what that looks like is, oh, this problem that was a problem before is no longer a problem. And I think it's important to consider too, like, the term is rapid transformational therapy. I don't really believe in changes overnight. I just believe in changes that don't take 5 to 10 years through, traditional methods. Does that make sense to you, Peggy?
It does, yes. And I was trying to remember what my experience with Jenga was. Well, it was with being a Cub Scout mom. Cub Scouts, we played that game a lot.
Mm,
Um, and I think back many decades before your age group, we played things like pickup sticks and, we made towers out of regular, we didn't have the fancy games that you spent a lot of money at Hasbro for. We, took a deck of cards and made a tower and tried not to see how many you could get in before it collapsed, that type of thing.
right.
Um, and I think a lot of times when people are looking for answers for their psychological issues, they make it a lot more complicated than it
Yeah.
needs to be.
And psychological issues are typically a feeling problem, not a knowledge problem. Usually it's something that needs to be felt or not felt. And so that's where kind of some of the somatic parts come in too. So, like, let's use an example. Let's say I want to lose weight. Maybe that's a kind of a common example. The reason most people are unsuccessful using therapy to lose weight is because they're only focusing on the top block of the Jenga. The weight itself is not typically the issue. Usually it's something underneath. So what they're doing is they're using an upstairs solution for a downstairs problem. Does that make sense to you?
It does. So you're saying the issue is not that we want to fit into our bathing suit next summer. It's more that we're not even aware of maybe certain feelings that pop up that we're not paying attention to, and we reach for popcorn or ice cream. Ice cream, I think, is a popular one people reach for.
Of course.
Um, it works sometimes. Not
Mhm.
very healthy, but it works. Um, so we all run so like in a hyper speed all the time, trying to cram so much in the day that we usually don't take time to think of things like that.
Right.
We even try to strive to have automatic things. It's just the way the external world has wired us.
Right. And if I may interject, Peggy,
Sure.
you know, I find examples are helpful. So I'm going to give you a real example of a client I worked with pretty recently. And she came to me and she said, "Hey, Max, I want to lose 40 pounds." I was like, "Great, look into it." And, when you first look at that, it's like, okay, I'm going to focus on the weight. This is the top block. Well, through hypnosis and through a variety of different techniques we used, we actually discovered that there was something that happened in her childhood where she was sexually objectified, where she dealt with some sexual trauma. And what she determined was it's not safe for me to be who I am right now. So I need to gain weight so that I'm ugly, so that no one comes and approaches me. So this was her nervous system going beyond conscious thought, trying to protect her. And so we need to go to that level if we're going to actually start to resolve the issue that you're experiencing.
That makes perfect sense.
Mm,
Um, what are some of the other patterns that people come to you for to you know
yeah, that's great. Weight's a very popular one. Everyone wants to look good in their swimsuit, as you said before. Addiction's a really common one. Substance, gambling, sex addiction, things like that. Anxiety is actually, I consider it a pattern as well. Typically, it's a thought pattern people get stuck with. And you can get stuff stuck up in your body too. And what happens is like all of these patterns, so whether it's addiction, weight, anxiety, depression, typically they live lower down, as we talked about the Jenga tower, into the nervous system. And really, your nervous system just has one job, it's to keep you alive today using yesterday's information. So the reason you're still holding on to the weight, for example, is because somewhere deep down your body thinks you need it, or your mind thinks something is required. So we need to figure out, okay, well, what's actually going on there, and how can we reprogram your mind so that outdated programming is no longer.
so because of the I don't know about Canada. I know in America the cost of a pack of cigarettes is really high nowadays. I'm finding a lot of people coming to me looking for smoking cessation. Um, so how do you, with that example, what would be a
Mm.
way to approach that?
Yeah, for smoking cessation specifically.
Yes.
Wow, I'm actually really glad you brought that up because I that's what I used to specialize in. So I've seen a lot of clients with that issue. Um, it's so the presenting problem when we go back to scenes, it's all unique to the individual, but the actual root is usually the same. Usually it's some sort of unmet need. Am I safe? Am I in control? Am I enough? Am I able to relax? So typically in clients, the most common pattern I've seen with smoking cessation is this thing I connect with. Like this thing is my friend and I need it. I might not logically think I need it, but deep down my body learned to rely on it. My subconscious learned to rely on it. And so this thing is like my best friend. I actually hear that a lot. Like this is the one thing that's been with me through thick and thin. It sounds so crazy when you think about it using your conscious mind, but when you go down to the parts of yourself, you realize that this is the most familiar thing to them.
So I think years ago that the premise was that you were missing something in your uh, oral stimulation as a baby or something, and some people, um, but and that sometimes people are struggling with wanting to give up with it, but the reality is they can't afford $15 a pack of cigarettes, and to do a pack or two a day.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's so true. In my experience, it's often an identity issue. It's I identify as a smoker and this is who I am. And so if we can actually change how you identify,
okay.
then it's a lot easier to deal with cravings because that's something I used to. That's the old version of Max, right?
Right. That makes a lot of sense because when we talk about a lot of the autoimmune illnesses and things like that, we've had shows on, you are not your illness is not your identity. It just, you are
Yeah,
Max and you happen to have this problem or this issue.
right. Right. It's not my anxiety, it's the anxiety. And those are two completely different things. You don't need to take ownership over it, but you do have a responsibility to feel it and to heal it. But it's not yours per se.
Okay, now that's an interesting thought because if it's not mine, why do I have a responsibility to do anything with it?
Because it's in my opinion if the client comes to me, usually they're telling me exactly why they want to fix it, and typically it's because I know deep down that I'm limiting myself through it, so I want to change that. I want to be better. I want to improve in these specific categories. So that's does that answer your question? I'm not sure if I hit the mark there.
Well, one example I'm thinking about is very often I'll get grandmothers to be, expecting their first grandchild or whatever, and their children are saying, you can't hold the baby if you smell like smoke. You have to give up smoking. I don't want that around my babies, and I'm not sure that that's really their motivation. I mean, obviously, they want to be with their grandchild, but is that enough to, or do they have to have something intrinsically? It's not healthy for me. That's why, or you know, because you're not really ready if somebody else is forcing you to make that choice.
Yeah, in all of my discovery calls, I ask a specific question on a scale of 1 to 10. How motivated are you to approach difficult work and do it? Because willingness is step one, right? If it's not coming from within yourself, realistically, what's going to happen is you're going to stop smoking for a month, and then you're going to have a really hard day. You're going to have someone sick in the family, or something's going to happen, and you're going to go back to your old best friend. But if we go past the prefrontal cortex, and if we start looking at a nervous system level, we can start to cause some shifts.
Okay, well, on that comment, we're going to take a brief break and we'll be right back. Thank you.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to easysense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's easysense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Welcome back to the Holistic Nurse. I have Max Gauthier from Canada. We're talking about the type of hypnosis, the rapid transformational therapy that he does, and how patterns sometimes are hard to break, and he tries to offer some shortcuts. Why can't we just say, well, and I have seen people quit their addictions. I'm just going to stop cold turkey. I'm not going to smoke after today, or, I'm going to stop my drugs, which, if you have a real physiological addiction to street drugs, opioids, that can be a medical crisis if you're not doing that under medical supervision, uh, enough to cause a heart attack, things like that. So how do people, why don't we just all just say we're going to stop? What stops us from doing that?
This is a
Is it a
topic.
belief?
Yeah, this is a topic I fixated on a couple years ago because I find it fascinating. It's like, why can some people just quit like that? And some people, it takes years and years of struggling. And if you look at the cold turkey people, I'll just call them that, what we don't see is what's happening behind the scenes, and it's that something is going on inside their system, their nervous system, something's changing. And what I've observed with those people is they have some sort of moment that completely shifts their identity from being a smoker to a non-smoker or whatever. They no longer associate with the specific thing. Something happens kind of subconsciously in the moment. Um, Now, in terms of like why these patterns don't like resolve on their own, and it's because willpower itself exists at the prefrontal cortex level, critical thinking level. And so again, those patterns, they live further down, they live in the nervous system. And so when you try to, let's say, override a pattern using willpower a lot of the time, it's it's kind of like arguing with a smoke detector while insisting that the house isn't on fire. So it's like this alarm, it doesn't listen to logic, right? The alarm's just beeping, but it's built to fire fast and to ask questions never. It never asks questions. And so it's a good analogy because your nervous system really acts the same way. If there's a fire going on and it's burning, it's not going to respond to any logical focus. It's not going to, the top layer of the Jenga tower, knocking that first block, all that's going to happen is either it's not going to move because the bottom blocks are holding it in place, the underlying issues, or you knock it off and then the layer that was just beneath that one is going to be pushed up. And so we can work through the tower and we can go step by step, or we can kind of approach the bottom of it and then start to pull it apart.
Okay, and the way my ADD mind works sometimes, I'm picturing the smoke detector, the fire, and the Jenga blocks are all made of wood. So we just had a bonfire.
Right. Amazing. Yeah.
Um, so, what is the most complicated kind of problem that you've been able to help somebody with in using these techniques?
Yeah. It's fantastic. Um, So patterns, when I'm talking about patterns, we're talking about, anxiety, depression, weight, addictions. It gets a little bit more complicated when you get into areas such as like PTSD, like post traumatic stress disorder, complex PTSD, things like that, where it's not just about changing a pattern, it's also about teaching your body and over time slowly doing exposure therapy so that we don't overload your system, that it's okay to be calm and safe, that you're safe now, that the danger is no longer present. When you're constantly waking up feeling like cops are chasing you, for example, this is something I hear a lot from clients. Your body just has that natural reaction. For some reason, your body thinks there's a tiger out there. There's no tiger, right? But it's still convinced that there is. So how do we then therefore go into your mind and prove to it that there's no tiger? Does that make sense to you?
It does, yes, and I know, there's a lot of behaviors because I'm a survivor of, some PTSD type things, and
Wow.
sometimes I have to keep reminding myself that what I did to make myself feel safe back then is not necessary in the present moment. Is that a difficult jump to help make your clients reach, or is that not even necessary? You just
Part of
and
me, yeah, part of me being like a trauma informed therapist is not rushing. And so, like, smoking cessation, you can often help someone stop that completely in 1 to 2 sessions. But when it comes to something more intricate like PTSD, and as you described, it's almost like your body needs to catch up. It's like your
okay,
body needs to get back to the present. It's like I'm not in war anymore. I see a lot of like war veterans. Like we're not in battle anymore. Your body thinks you are, but you're not actually there. So it's like, how can we look at all four corners of the room and prove to you that there's no danger, there's no fires that are being erupted?
okay. Are there any type of issues that you've come across in your practice that this would not be an appropriate approach to use?
Absolutely. I turn clients away all the time or refer them to other people in my network. It depends on the nature of the issue, and it also depends on if I'm a good, fit practitioner for the person. I can give you an example. I my typical kind of demographic of individuals I work with, usually female, usually 50 plus, and usually kind of they're at that point in their life where they're past midlife and they're trying to deal with the trauma of their childhood that still has never fully resolved. That's like kind of the most common demographic I see. And in those cases, I don't I don't really, even though the approach is called rapid transformational therapy, I don't really subscribe to that rapid word. It's like we're gonna take our time, and I don't have any of the answers. All the answers exist within you. And so what I'm doing is I'm just facilitating a process so that we can find those answers within yourself.
Okay. So what is the most common type of client then that does come to you? I mean, sometimes I get people, it's as simple as, I've lost something a couple years ago and I'm trying to find it, and get hypnosis help me find it. Or I used to speak another language, when I visited my grandparents as a child, I'd like to recover the ability to do that language. Those are, not going to affect your health in such a way, but this seems like this is a technique that could help something like that also.
Absolutely. It's never a guarantee. I don't make guarantees, but it is a common process that when you go back to scenes from your past, when I regress you there, there's things that come up that you've never thought about since the incident. And a lot of the reason that's the case is because your mind's trying to protect you. If you went through something so painful like a trauma is too much too soon. And so what your brain does is when it experiences the trauma, it disassociates and it says, I'm never going to touch this again because I remember how bad that felt or how awful that was. And so I'm going to put this in a box and I'm going to push it down so that this person never needs to experience it. But what happens is because that's pushed down now, it's got to go somewhere. It's not going to just disappear. And then it ends
Right.
up manifesting into other problems. And then you come see me 50 years later and you're like, I don't know why this thing is here. And it's like, oh, this thing happened when you were 6 years old and you're still living from that programming. Not your fault, again, but something to look into.
Is it enough to just to have an understanding of where the behavior and the patterns are coming from, or is it to be able to change, or is it a little more complicated?
a little bit more complicated. I'll start with this. I would say I think there's a difference between knowing something and understanding. Like I might know that I smoke because I need to take a break from life because I just lost my mother, for example. This is just an example, right? I might know that, but understanding and feeling how painful that was, and then coming to the conclusion that smoking will not bring my mother back, that's a completely different ballgame. And remind me of the last part of your question. I forgot what the second part was.
Um, well, it'll come to me in a moment, I'm sure.
Sure.
Um,
Fun.
so when somebody feels like they've tried everything else and you're a last resort, which that
Mm,
probably do. I don't, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm your last resort, but I'm hoping I am your last resort. I mean, if you're
right.
successful, you're the last resort, and they can move
Mm,
on in their life. Um, but when somebody does that, and you know, on both sides of the border, I know we all have a lot of stressors in our country going on right now, both of them. Um, and people that I'm seeing are, that's it's triggering up the propensity to engage in these behaviors that are less than healthy, or maybe medical and healthcare is not as accessible, uh,
mm,
not affordable, like with the way things. I mean, I've had patients come to our side of the border because with your medical system, they couldn't get procedure that they needed because of their age, so they came over. And one particular thing, it was a retired doctor, cardiologist. His wife hadn't worked their entire marriage, but she was an RN. She got her American RN license, got a job, so he could have health benefits and get the procedure he needed that your country said he was too old for back then. Um, I'm
interesting.
uh, I'm sure there's been improvements in both systems since then, but
Mm,
um, but all of that contributes to just a stress, the electronic overload, the exposure that we have to just fast moving electronic blips. You don't even get even these digital billboards on the highway. Every once in a
mm,
while, I see something that catches my eye, but I've already passed it before I can read the whole thing, and that's kind of how the mind feels a lot of times.
right. It's so interesting. And even though you consciously didn't register that billboard, it's likely that subconsciously you soaked it all in. Your subconscious is active 100% of the time, even when you sleep. That's a part of the dreaming process. Is your subconscious is unloading a lot of the stuff from the day. That's why you'll see random objects and whatnot as you're dreaming a lot of the time. Um, yeah, it's very much your subconscious absorbs everything that's going on around you, and you can't really help that. And so, kind of to your point about like the medical system and whatnot, um, you know, we'll see all these ads for like medical products, and it makes
Mhm.
us feel that we have to go out there to solve what's happening inside of us. And I believe the opposite. It's like we don't need to go out there. You have all the answers within you already. We just need to explore that. And it might take one session, it might take 20, but we can get you to that point without the need of external stuff. Not that that
Right.
stuff is bad per
Yeah.
se, but the clients that come to me want to do it on their own without involving other things.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I know with respect to those commercials and that constant input, if you want to change my mood instantly, let me hear. Ask your doctor if this is right. Well, my doctor should know what I, I'm not
Right.
gonna. He's so busy
Yeah,
helping people, he doesn't have time to watch those commercials.
of
Um,
course.
and so, but a lot of people, they're just grabbing at straws. They're feeling helpless because there's so much is being thrown at them all the time from all directions.
Mm,
And if you add that with a baseline of uh, like one of my kids said to me once when they became an adult, I didn't grow up in Leave It to Beaver's household. No, but none of us did. We're going to take another quick break and we'll be right back. Thanks.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant. Like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Hi, welcome back to this week's Holistic Nurse with Peggy Smith and Max Gauthier and Maximum Therapy from Nova Scotia, Canada. Um, Pick up what we only have one more large section here. What would you make sure we don't want to miss in the stuff?
Yeah, I think I might sound a little bit repetitive here, but the main thing I want, your audience to know is that it's not their fault that willpower hasn't worked. Willpower itself is not really designed to work. By nature of the problem, it doesn't work for 99% of people. I'm just throwing that number out there, but the vast majority of people it doesn't work for. So don't blame yourself. Don't create shame in that instance. It's like you're using the wrong tools per se. And so, um, a big thing I've noticed with clients that I think you might think this is interesting, Peggy. I'm going to use this analogy of a costume. So same root pattern but different costume. So let's say weight, addiction, people pleasing. That's something we haven't talked about yet. Performing instead of living. All these different patterns. Typically, they're different. Let's say surface behaviors, but underneath that, it's almost the same handful of needs. So am I safe? Am I in control? Am I enough? Am I allowed to relax? So a classic example of that would be, if you're someone that struggles with weight, it's typically a control or comfort issue wearing a food costume. So the costume is what you're seeing. It's the top layer of the Jenga tower, but it appears to be what the actual problem is, but it's just a mask for what's actually underneath. What's underneath is again those needs or control or comfort issue. Another example of this, addiction. Addiction itself is often I need to numb myself. I need to stop feeling something or I need to feel something different. But really, that's a mask for I need to connect. I don't feel connected to myself. I don't feel connected to others. I need to disappear. So we have the surface level and then we have what's underneath it. Does that make sense to you, Peggy?
It does, and what comes to mind there, especially with addiction, and that covers all addictions, food addictions, like that
Mm,
with all that we know about neuroplasticity and everything, we also know that addictions tend to be passed on through generations. But it's all from the same part of your brain that's operating when you're active in an addiction.
mm,
And like when I had found the background of my family of origin, I was adopted. I had told my children, you're going to have to fight some of these urges harder than maybe your peers would. And
mm,
that actually kind of makes that's the old school theory of this is your fault. Because if you're not able to fight it, you feel like it's your fault. You didn't do it good enough. That wasn't my intention, but I see where that's a common way to
mm.
reflect on
Interesting.
that. And
Okay.
you coming from the another generation, we're still dealing with the same brain, the same physiology, but now
Yeah.
we know more about neuroplasticity.
And I don't know if you're familiar with the name Gabor Mate,
Yes, I did.
Hungarian guy. He's beautiful, beautiful books on addiction. So, so good. And one of the things he talks about, and I'm proposing this idea, I'm actually still deciding how I feel about the concept, but he talks about there's no gene for addiction. When an addiction is passed on, it's not actually the gene that's passed, it's the trauma itself. It's the experience when the child was in there growing up, they experienced something from their parents or their guardian or whoever that led them in that same direction. It's something that kind of happened behind the scenes. So I'm not a big scientist. I'm not going to make any claims about that, but it's something I find very interesting and I've been looking into a lot. It's this concept that, you know, maybe it's not genetics. Maybe it's something being passed. And I anecdotally with my clients, that's what I've observed pretty much all the time. So it's very,
Well, one of the topics that we've been working on for months now, and I guess because of the complications of, my own background, we're going to have a few shows on generational trauma. Um,
Mm,
and, from what I've learned from Ancestry.com and meeting a few relatives from the original family and everything, um, yeah, but then, you know, some of us we all had that propensity, I guess, to choose even unconsciously addictive type behaviors,
mm,
uh, where we found them as solutions, be it not good solutions, for whatever our situations were at any given moment. But they generational trauma research has shown that um, you actually alter your genes. I've been reading some studies on mice because you have lots of generations of mice in just a 2-month period. They For the original generation, they gave them like I don't know, electric shock or some kind of noxious stimuli, and the mice learned to avoid it. Subsequent
mm.
generations avoided it because they'd never been shocked like that, but they have memories in their genes that this is bad, even though it never experienced themselves. The mice research that's out there on what you're talking about is really getting it's quite
Awesome.
extensive, very interesting.
I'm gonna ask you actually to send me those links once you're done because I really want to read into this. That's really interesting. And a good angle for this that I find is liberating for a lot of people is addiction, if we want to talk about that, for example. But any of these patterns, really, they're learned behaviors by your nervous system. So what that means is if you've learned it, that means you can naturally unlearn it. And so, because if you learn something, you can always unlearn it. And so the objective might be, okay, I've learned that this is what I need to do to survive or to protect myself, and maybe I can learn something different. That's a little bit more healthy for me. It supports me, kind of keeps me more afloat.
Okay, that makes sense. So, uh, any particular success stories or complications or ideas that you want to have people thinking about if they're thinking about looking into this? Like, when you talk about regression,
Mm,
you're not going all the way back to the previous generation, right? You're just staying in the
mm.
present lifetime. And
I'm not trained in that area, past life
okay,
regression. I don't when I have clients that present that I kind of I will refer them to somebody else who kind of works in that area. Um, but I'm gonna I'm gonna do something kind of random here. This might be fun. This is just what's coming to my mind. This idea I want to leave. You've probably the word transcend.
hmm
What we're doing through therapy, through hypnosis, we're transcending. We're ending the trance. The trance being whatever pattern you're stuck in. We're actually going to be ending that pattern, so then you're not out in that trance anymore. So we're actually transcending the problem. And we transcend that problem by going through the Jenga tower and going as far down as we can, and then targeting those.
okay, that makes sense. And it seems kind of weird to use that term when hypnosis is associated with
Yep.
trance. I like that
Cool.
similarity there. Um, so I mean, obviously we're all feeling pressured, I think, to change a lot of our behavior patterns because what we learned before is not keeping up with present day society.
Mm,
Uh, and it's challenging for everybody, I think, of all ages. New graduates coming out of school now, they're they're looking at the world a lot differently than I did when
Mm,
I was graduating. I'm
mm,
sure you were graduating. Um,
yeah. I think it's important to start there. It's like, yeah, this is really challenging right? Like this is where we're at. It's what I'm experiencing is challenging. And so it kind of gives you a sense of grace. It's like I have to like I have to acknowledge that. It's like I don't I don't have to I don't really know where I'm going here. Yeah, kind of lost my train of thought. That's all right. I'm gonna close with this, Peggy, if it's okay. I think this might be helpful for your audience. We talked about patterns throughout this entire kind of interview today. What actually shifts a pattern is talking to the part of you that's running the show, not the part of you that is observing the show. So there's a difference. So the part that's running the show and the part that's observing the show. So we're going underneath the thinking layer and we're going to where that old wiring was laid down and we're giving it new information so that it knows the danger isn't happening. So everything we talked about, we can kind of throw it in a nutshell like that. And to someone, this is something I'm particularly passionate about because I have a history of addiction. I tried so many things, and the only thing that worked for me was hypnosis. If you're someone who's tried everything, from my heart to yours, you haven't failed. And the reason you haven't failed is probably because you're using an upstairs solution for a downstairs problem. So if we can just shift the focus and do something maybe a little bit different, we might be able to get you to the point of success.
okay, we recently had someone who talked about, we assume that our brain is the source of everything, or at least maybe our heart chakra is that area.
Mm,
But this practitioner spoke of how our gut is really what
mm,
determines everything, the gut biome, and if we can change the biome in our gut, uh, and a lot of times, it's your gut that's telling you to engage in that addiction, or you shouldn't have done, the Jiminy
mm.
Cricket, everything else. So, um,
Right. Huh.
but so but it's something that we all can learn to harness the control for ourselves without being uh, judgmental, and that I think that's the hardest part. And a
Yeah.
lot of our holistic therapies are based in forgiveness type philosophies. Um, Colin Tippin wrote a book, Radical Forgiveness, which I've often referred to.
Mm,
And if you can forgive yourself, it's a lot easier to move on uh, to new choices, new behavior choices, and new patterns.
right.
It's also very scary for people. How do you address that with someone that they really, really want to change, but they're scared shitless about it?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's especially when this fear is and the fear is typically valid, right? Especially when it's based in trauma. There's something called pendulation. It's a really fancy term. All it really means is that when we're actually doing the therapy, we're gonna pendulate back and forth between the actual really painful thing and then something that's a lot more calm for your system. So what that actually looks like in practice with clients, when I have a client that's very visual, for example, I'll have them visualize their happy place, beach, mountains, lakes, whatever. And I'll have them store that as a memory for this session. And then what we do is then we pendulate to that childhood trauma experience that you've been unable to heal from. And we'll go there and we'll stay there for 10 to 15 seconds. Then when I start to notice that you're starting to dissociate, it's becoming a little bit too much, then we go back. And so the idea is that we want to expose you, but not expose you so much that you completely shut down and then, maybe get even worse, right? So it's all about having that balance.
yeah, balance, I think, is a large part of everything
Mm,
that isn't working right. It's because we don't have balance,
out of
whether it's
balance. Yeah.
physiological or psychological, or um, so. Where can people go if they want to explore this type of therapy, or well,
Absolutely.
we're gonna take a brief break, and
Mhm.
we'll come back, and you can share how to reach you, and where your links are and where people can go. Thank you.
Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Hi, welcome back to our final segment of The Holistic Nurse with Peggy Smith and Max Gauthier from Nova Scotia, Canada. We just have a few minutes left, Max. Tell people how they can reach you now that we've expanded the world view with virtual,
Wow.
and any final messages you'd like to tell people.
Awesome. Wow. I see you got my links there. That's great on the screen. Perfect. Yeah, I work virtually. In my experience, virtual in person, the results are pretty much the same unless the person has a strong preference for in person, and that does kind of a mental thing. And there aren't really any geographical barriers. I work throughout North America, and I've seen clients in Europe, in the Caribbean, different places. So there aren't any barriers that way. As you can see there, my website is maximumtherapy.live. So MAXIMUM and then live LIVE. If you go there to my main page, there will be a work with me tab, and you can look through there. Just so we're clear, there's never any pressure from me. I treat, discovery calls as conversations. And so really what we're doing is we're talking about what's been going on with you, and we can decide if I'm a good fit for you or if we're going to need to refer you to somebody else who might be someone that can support you, depending on what you're coming with. But yeah, this is something I've been practicing for 4 to 5 years now. And it's something that I lose sleep about. I'm passionate about patterns. I want to get as many people in front of me as I can. And I try to be reasonable with my pricing and my approaches, because when I had my history of addiction and I had a practitioner come to me, I was like, dude, I can't afford your service. And he's like, look, I'm going to cut you a deal because I know you need it. And so I try to be reasonable, as that guy was reasonable with me when I really needed it. So yeah.
So that is great. What would you say? Yeah, I think I'd like to point out that if you're having a discovery conversation with any therapist and they tell you that they're going to refer you to someone else, it doesn't mean that you're so horribly and the problem is so big. It's not a personal thing. It's that they recognize that their limits, and they want to get you the best help that's most appropriate. And not all of us can help everybody. We have our own little niches that we're good at.
Absolutely. It's such an important point. It's, for example, I work typically with spiritual people. And when I get someone that comes to me who's a bit more religious, I have people in my network who work better with kind of religious focused therapies. So that's just a small example. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with you if a practitioner refers you to somebody else. It's more, actually, that's probably a good thing for that practitioner. They're acknowledging their limits.
Absolutely. So we just basically just have just a couple more minutes. Do you have anything you want to reiterate or offer some hope out or?
Yeah, it's really good. Um, I'm just trying to think here. Nothing really that I haven't spoken about. I just find that using that Jenga tower analogy really provides a lot of grace for people, because it's like we're actually approaching this the completely wrong way most of the time. It's we're looking at the top block. We're like, this issue is weight, but really, it's like it's not the issue. I had a client the other day, and I was getting him off of cannabis, and I said to him, what does this give you? This is when he was deep in hypnosis, and he said, this feels like my mother's hug that I never got. It's like it's hard to find something that's more real than that. And it goes to show that most of the time what you think is going on isn't really what's going on, and that's why hypnosis, arts work, things like that are very good tools to maybe get you a bit closer.
Well, very rarely does somebody come to me with whatever they think they're coming with, and that's the real problem. And it's like when I worked in the emergency room, and they show up at 2 o'clock in the morning and say, "I've had this problem for 6 months." Well, what brought you here at 2 o'clock in the morning? And, oh, I don't know. Yeah,
Who's the catalyst, right? Like,
yeah. But that was the real problem.
mm, mhm.
So that there's a lot of options out here for people, and I think most of us are very reasonable. We're trying to, you know, uh, and people all over the world are pretty. We all have something in common. We're all human. Uh,
Yeah.
and we're having some of the same problems ourselves, even. And if we've been fortunate enough to learn the tools that can help us, uh,
Mm,
we're always willing to share them, because basically, I think humans like to help each other.
right.
Watch the animals, your domestic, dogs and cats. They're grooming each other, they're helping each other. The
Mhm.
monkeys at the zoo,
Yeah.
we're no different from them. We have a little bit higher mental ability. We hope.
Yeah. So true. And it's like one of the most human things there is pain. So if you're experiencing a lot of pain right now, know you're not alone. There's probably a billion other people, maybe not the same pain, but they're experiencing pain too. And I find that comforting. The fact that it's a universal human experience, but it's also a universal human experience that it can be healed.
And pain is not just physical. Emotional pain is just as real as physical pain. And
Emotional pain can exist physically in the body. I see that all the time too. It gets built up in different places, and can cause, physical manifestations.
uh, absolutely, we see diet changes. Cancer. One of the stress is one of the biggest causes of cancer. So it's been really great having you back, Max. You look great. I'm
Thank
glad
you.
to see you again. And everybody, please reach out to Max's websites and links. And, he's got a lot to offer and teach us all. Thank you for coming this week. And, just keep doing the good work you're doing. It's great. It's
Thank you,
refreshing.
Peggy. Thank you, Peggy.
Yeah.
I very much look up to the work you've done too. So it's a pleasure to be here with you.
Well, thank you. I enjoy having you. And, we'll be talking again real soon. Thank
Excellent.
you, everybody. Have a great week, healthy week, and you know, enjoy yourself. Be safe.
Cheers.
This has been The Holistic Nurse with host Peggy Smith. Tune in each week where you're encouraged to send in questions and receive private responses and suggestions if appropriate. Here's Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern.